It's IB Countdown to Kickoff along with Vince D'Addario, Sean Stiers as we roll into Notre Dame Louisville weekend. Final game before the bye week. We've come to our first of 2 bye weeks for a second consecutive year. I know. I think everyone's feeling like bye week, at least from an IB standpoint. Bye week comes at a pretty good time.
Well, I'm 100% ready for the bye week. I am looking forward to it. Of course, the other job that I have has booked that weekend pretty solidly. So don't get it off completely, but still not quite as involved as a normal game week is. So I am absolutely ready for a little relaxation. And one of the things I love about a bye week, by the way, is that we can watch other games and not have to stress about doing our jobs. We just be fans.
True and true. That's right.
And I haven't looked at the slate. Hopefully there's good games next week.
Try to sleep a little bit more, maybe. I don't know. Call me crazy.
That would be nice.
Yeah, we're going to bookend October, though, with bye weekends because we are at the end of October as well. So
which I am okay with, by the way.
Yeah. And that'll be right before basketball starts as well. So kind of the last breath of air for me for several months. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, Vince, Notre Dame, Louisville it seems like every week is a referendum on Marcus Freeman. I don't know what you think. I mean, basically since Northern Illinois, it's kind of kicked. And, when you've got the history that you've got with Louisville from just last year, it feels like that kind of has taken this to another level as well. What do you think?
No, it's absolutely a referendum on Marcus Freeman, and we should not be having these conversations in year 3. I mean, some of this stuff should have gotten figured out by now. And we talk about how this team is a week-to-week situation, and our opinions of Marcus Freeman are kind of on a week-to-week situation.
Exactly.
I mean, can you get the team up for lower games? Can you get the team up for home games? Can you, continue to have success on the road? I mean, there's a lot of question marks that I feel like should have been behind us at this point, when talking about Marcus Freeman. And unfortunately, it's not where we're at right now. It literally is a game-to-game situation where we are always evaluating, and I don't think we're being hypercritical. I think that's
I don't either.
It's completely accurate right now.
I think unfortunately the way things have played out so far, it's completely fair. And you mentioned home and away and all that. And last year, the games that they lost where they were no-shows were against better teams on the road.
Yep.
And so far, they open up the season with Texas A&M with a victory. That's A&M's only loss so far. They've won a game even with a backup quarterback. And how good Purdue is, obviously. At least they're still a Big Ten team, I guess. They're not a MAC team, but then you come home and you look the way you do for basically a game and a half against Northern Illinois.
Yeah,
and then
that's fair.
First half against Miami, Ohio before the things. And it's like, I don't understand how we got to this place, because last year they dominated the teams that they were supposed to beat. And so it's really unusual that this early on, with all these things that seem to be pointing in Marcus Freeman's favor, with staff continuity for the most part, like he's got all people who he's hired. Like you just thought that he would be past some of this. But like you said, it's completely fair that every week is a referendum, just because we've seen so many peaks and valleys already.
No doubt about it. Too many peaks and valleys. And we talk about the roller coaster of emotion and the roller coaster of, who this team is. That's why we're going week to week. We just don't know what to expect. And that's why the opinions about this game that we're going to be talking about here momentarily are so all over the map, because nobody knows. Are they going to, is the team that played NIU going to show up? Is the team that played Purdue going to show up? We don't know who is going to show up. So I don't know, man.
Well, and it's obvious that Louisville doesn't know who's going to show up either. But, and not to be throwing stones, because I mean everyone makes predictions and all that stuff. But I was reading some predictions by some Louisville people, and it's like, who knows? Maybe it happens, but I don't think it's going to happen. But like they seem to think that that Louisville's going to come up here and just blow right over Notre Dame. Somewhat similarly to what they did last year, and that. Again, that's why this is such a big question, and we'll get to that in a little bit, like the comments that Marcus Freeman had earlier this week about kind of using last week for motivation and stuff like that. But I do wonder, like, just how much that, how that helps his team, I guess. Like
Marcus Freeman, you mean? Yeah.
From last year.
I think that there is going to be a ton of internal motivation in this game that, to be honest with you, even if Notre Dame comes out strong and they're motivated and all of those different things, is it Marcus Freeman that got them motivated, or are they just motivated because they got their butts handed to them last year?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of the same guys that are playing this year that played last year, or at the very least they were on the sidelines. And so, where did that motivation come from? Maybe that doesn't matter. As long as they're motivated, who cares where the motivation comes from? Okay, fine. At the end of the day, a win is all that matters. And if I'm Louisville, why would you not be confident coming into this game? You pushed Notre Dame around last year. And honestly, that game was never in doubt. I think it ended up being a 13-point win for Louisville. Did it feel that close to you? Didn't.
No, I mean, it's like thinking, like when I was recollecting it before I went back and looked at kind of how the game played out and stuff like that, it felt like Louisville was much more in control of that game than a 7-7 game at halftime that essentially took until early in the fourth quarter for the floodgates to start to open. But again, 5 turnovers will do that to you. That's a big part for as poorly as Notre Dame played. If you took out the 5 turnovers, Notre Dame, it's still probably, it would have been a 1-possession game, but it did feel like Louisville just outplayed Notre Dame for the most part from start to finish. When you've got a bruiser running back like Audric Estime, who was just a complete non-factor in the game, I think that says a lot right there for, how Louisville played the Irish.
Yeah, no, completely agree.
What about last week from a Notre Dame perspective? What questions were answered for you, Vince?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say
the big one.
I don't want to say that my questions were answered about, Notre Dame stretching the field and all that kind of stuff, because I know Riley Leonard has the talent to do it. I've seen it, but just not in a Notre Dame uniform. I've seen him do it in a blue uniform. I haven't seen him doing it in a navy blue uniform. It was a royal blue uniform before.
And this week it'll be a green uniform. So
that's a good call. So it wasn't a matter of can he do it? It's a matter of would they do it? Would he do it? Would they call it? Would they, kind of a would situation, not a can situation. So, but I think that question was answered. Now the question moving into this week is going to be, can he put it all together? You know what I mean? Can he put the deep ball along with the layups and all that and have a complete game when it comes to throwing the football? Look, he's never going to be a 400-yard passer, and that's okay because he does obviously bring other things to the table. So I think that question was somewhat answered from last week. I would say defensively, I still have question marks on the interior of the defensive line, which you would think would have been the first question that would have been answered this year, but that is not the case. And so that question still lingers, but what does not linger is that Boubacar Traore is a really good football player, and as long as he continues on the path that he's on, I have no issues at the Viper position, and the defense as a whole is really, really good. So, got to get that interior kind of fixed a little bit, and can they stop the run when they need to against a good team? Those are all. Oh, I almost forgot the biggest question that was answered, Sean Stiers. James Rendell can punt.
Yes, that's a good one.
In a game.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I mean, we obviously saw Leonard complete passes downfield, and even when he didn't complete passes, they got a couple pass interference calls that helped him out just because he was willing to throw the ball and not just eat it or tuck and run or whatever. I just still think ultimately, like, even those things aside, I just feel like the ultimate answer that I'm looking for is what we started off talking about is, can Marcus Freeman get this team to play at a consistent level week in and week out, regardless of the opponent and regardless of where the game is played? That's, I mean, it really feels like a focus thing to me. Like this team, it just lacks that consistent like Purdue, again, they come out on the road and just took it to Purdue. Again, you can talk about, well, how good is Purdue and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, again, they're a Big Ten team. At least in theory, they should have been better than either of the two MAC teams that Notre Dame played.
In theory, yes.
Right. So to me, it's the big picture question. Like, that's the most important thing that still has to be answered. And we're only going to find that out in the long run, basically.
Yeah. We're not going to get that question answered this week. We're not going to get that question answered next week. Well, obviously it's a bye week, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We can go back at the end of the season and have that conversation and maybe answer it at that point, but maybe not even then, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's just been such a roller coaster. So, because I felt like we got that question answered last year, and then here we are.
Me too. Exactly.
I don't even know if we're going to have an answer come January, to be perfectly honest. So it is a week-to-week situation, and we're going to continue asking that question.
Do you feel like, when you look at this team, have we underestimated the impact of the depth that they have lost with some of these injuries? And now you got the transfer, the leaving of the team of Jaden Mickey, which knocks some more depth off. Cooper Flanagan's injured this week. So, you still have a couple talented tight ends with Mitchell Evans and Eli Raritan, but still, like Gabe Rubio has been out since training camp. And like you talk about that interior defensive line, he could potentially be a really key player. He played well against the run last year. And I mean, essentially, I was thinking about this today. I mean, think about it. Emil Wagner, who had never started a game and only played a handful of snaps in his life before this season, we've barely talked about him at right tackle. He has been one of the more consistent guys they have had on the offensive line. But the other four spots in this game are guys basically they are second team, number 2 on the depth chart at best.
Oh, yeah.
Because, obviously it was going to be Charles Jagasaw and not Anthony Knapp out there at left tackle. Ashton Craig has already been injured. Billy Schrouth has been injured. And, like, they've been hit by some injuries. Well, I guess Sam Pendleton technically
would have been the starter.
Right. He would have been the starter, even though he didn't enter training camp as the starter. But still, so he kind of,
but
he definitely,
he's arguably played the worst out of all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, again, like, have we underestimated, the impact of all that they've already taken on in 4 games of the season only?
I didn't really think about it until you brought it up and I saw it on the rundown, to be perfectly honest. And, there were a lot of question marks obviously coming in on the offensive line, and there still are some. It would be nice if they kind of figured some of that out. But again, you're right. They're working with 3 backups right now on the offensive line. And if you look at it from that perspective, you're like, okay, things could obviously be better, but they're figuring it out. But then you also look at, well, this is O-line U. They're supposed to have it figured out. It doesn't matter if you have to go to backups. Okay, I guess I could see that argument being made. And, then now Jaden Mickey's gone too. So what's that depth going to look like if somebody ends up getting hurt in that defensive backfield? That's what I'm really nervous about. So I think, injuries are obviously a part of the game, and it's stuff that you have to figure out, and you have to get yourself through, and, all of those different things. But this has been a significant blow for this team. And now we all thought that they were super deep and this is the deepest team they've had. And that depth is being tested at some positions, man.
Big time. Big time. And look, we were talking about the offensive line yesterday, and I don't remember the conversation we were having being as critical as some feedback that we received since yesterday. You know, like people, you know, like, well, you guys act like this is, you know, is worse than the 2021 line, but it's better than last year's line. This line is not better than last year's line. I'm sorry. Like, you lost 2 freaking NFL tackles. This line is not better. This line is not better than last year's line. And look, I admire the job that Anthony Knapp is attempting to do as a true freshman playing left tackle for, you know, again, Jagasaw would have been the starter out there. But the facts are the facts. One, we have our eyeballs and we can see it. And Anthony Knapp, according to Pro Football Focus, has a pass blocking grade of 30.1. That's on a scale of 100. On a scale of 100, his pass blocking grade is 30.1. And I mean, I honestly wouldn't have thought it was that bad just based on watching. But again, you know, like these guys, you know, like sometimes you have to take what they say with a grain of salt and stuff. But 30.1 is still 30.1. Still
very low.
Right. Because then, you know, like you look at some of the other guys. Pat Coogan has an 83.5. Billy Schrouth has an 82.6. So, you know, you're going, yeah, you know, is the whole line playing poorly? No. Emil Wagner has a 77.4, you know, so like 3 of the 5, you know, 3 of 5 essential guys are right up there at the top. Ashton Craig has a 69.2, you know, so that's getting a little bit lower, but still 69.2 is head and shoulders above 30, you know, and that's what we're talking about. We're not just making stuff up and pulling stuff out of the air. It's a significant issue. And, you know, if all you want to do is look at sacks allowed and tackles for loss and stuff like that, you do still have to factor in, and this is something that Marcus Freeman talked about last week because he was asked about it, with the state of the line, and especially at the very important left tackle position, you have a dual threat quarterback who has run for over 100 yards in back-to-back weeks, and that bails you out of a lot of potential sacks and potential tackles for loss. You know, so like you can't just look at simple stats like that and say, well, the line can't be playing that bad. They've only given, you know, they only gave up 1 sack. You know, there's still other factors that play into it. And, you know, and again, I'm not burying these guys. I respect what they're trying to do, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. And like, this is a significant challenge that they're going to go up against with Louisville, Vince, because it's a Louisville team in terms of their defense that has been pretty darn good so far, especially their defensive, their front 7, 26 tackles for loss. They're 7th in the nation, 8.7 tackles for loss a game. They had 7 last week against Georgia Tech. And so like I look at this and it makes me wonder, do you think we see from Notre Dame a similar offensive game plan that we saw in week 1 down at Texas A&M?
I'm very interested to see what the game plan actually is. I really hope that is not the case, I don't want that to be the game plan.
No, I don't either.
I'll just say that. I hope that is not the case. I hope it is not, well, we're just going to come out, we're going to do what they allow us to do. No, if that's the pregame interview, Sean,
Vince's favorite.
I'm checking out, man. Like, that cannot be the pregame interview.
Right. I mean, at some point, what do you do well, and how do you impose your will on somebody?
Exactly.
You know?
And if you think you're a top 10 team in the country, or a top 5 team in the country, or whatever number you want to put there, you need to do what you do, and don't worry about what the other team does. They need to worry about what you're doing. Like, that's the mentality that you have to have. And I mean, it breaks my heart to hear him say, like, well, Miami of Ohio, what they do defensively, you know, we're going to have to do this. And they're, you know, what? Who gives a crap what Miami of Ohio does defensively? Who cares, man?
Yeah.
Like, that part really, really bothers me when it comes. So, look, the game plan needs to be more of the same from what we saw against Purdue and against Miami of Ohio. They need to keep building on what Riley Leonard does well, and then he needs to execute it. And if that happens, they're going to be just fine. They're going to be just fine. This is a big game for Notre Dame, no doubt about it. But you know who else it's a big game for? Louisville. A really big game for them, too. It's the best team that they've faced, and it's not close.
Coach, how do you mentally prepare for a fan base and a team that's as hungry and ready to win at all costs as Louisville?
I mean, that fan base, you got to compete against that fan base, Vince.
Oh, my gosh. The only people that are competing against that fan base are us, I guess. I don't know. Marcus Freeman doesn't have to worry about the Louisville fan base. That is second dumbest question of the year.
I wish we were keeping
I know.
Track.
Need to keep like a tally board like over here.
I know. I mean, this feels like, I mean, it is. I mean, this is a game that's been circled from a Notre Dame perspective, I think. Even, like I say, even though it's they've only played 5 times, but after last year, doesn't it feel a little bit more like there's more, like almost like a Michigan State type rivalry or something like that? Like there's, like bad blood between the programs.
There's bad blood because Louisville embarrassed Notre Dame. Like that's, to me, that's the only reason there's bad blood there. They got embarrassed by Louisville, and they need to get some of their pride back. So hoping that is what takes place.
That's funny. I was thinking the exact same thing this morning. It's I know you never watched Lost. You need to did you ever give Lost a try?
I've never watched a single episode.
It's streaming. I know it's streaming on different platforms. You need to give it a shot.
I'll have to look it up.
I mean, it's a linear show. So you're like, like give it a shot for a couple episodes, see if it gets you hooked or not. There's a character named Desmond. He's a Scottish guy who ends up on the island, and he's down in the hatch and he's isolated. He was actually, living down there with the guy. You remember the guard in Shawshank Redemption, Clancy Brown, the guy who used to beat everybody up, and all that kind of stuff. He's like, Desmond is down there with him for a while, and then Clancy's character ends up there. But anyway, like, I just had a popcorn scene come out.
It's on Netflix.
There you go. There you go. Desmond's thing was, I gotta get my honor back. Penny was his girlfriend. I gotta get my honor back. And that's what this feels like. It's like Notre Dame has got to get its honor back against Louisville. Because
100%.
It's one thing to lose a game, but it's a completely different thing to just totally lay an egg and look like they looked down there last year in Louisville. And I mean, again, it's like Bourbon City and all that stuff, and everyone's liquored up, and it's a night game and all those different factors, and it's going to look a lot different at Notre Dame Stadium this weekend than it looked down there. But Notre Dame absolutely has got to get its honor back against Louisville this weekend. That's what it's all about.
Yep. And if they're going to, I guess they got to do it in green jerseys. So I just hope they do it in the white pants with the gold emblems. I think that would be freaking great.
I still don't understand why they never did anything on social media to why it took somebody asking Marcus Freeman at both press conferences, are you going to wear green or what? Why didn't they?
They've had the productions the last 2 years, right? They've had the Vegas one, and then they had the green jersey one, and this year we get nothing. Well,
I mean, even if they just say, hey, it's an Irish wear green game and we're wearing green,
They did the was the Wolf of Wall Street, wasn't that this year? What was that announcing? See, I've already forgotten.
What was that announcing? I don't remember now.
It was bad. Like, I didn't think that one was
bad. I felt like of the productions they've done, that kind of sits at the bottom.
It left me wanting, as they say. It was not great.
I agree.
Not good.
I agree. Let's just hear some of Marcus Freeman's comments, though. He was asked this week about if he would use last year's loss to Louisville as motivation for his team this week. And here's Marcus Freeman's answer.
I think as you think back to last year, it's not going to be a lack of motivation. They'll be motivated. I think it's an opportunity for guys that weren't in this program last year to be able to reflect and understand that, hey, we lost to this team last year, but there's a lot of great learning opportunities from that game. And that's what I'm going to preach to our team, is that I'm not revisiting last year to motivate you. I'm revisiting last year to learn from those things that we have to learn from, that game presented. You know, it's a lot like therapy. Sometimes you got to revisit those dark places, you know, to kind of get out of it what you need to. And so we're definitely going to revisit last year, but my intentions are to make sure we gain the wisdom and the learning opportunities that the film of last year will truly tell us.
I still don't know exactly what that means, like exactly how he's going to use it for motivation, but it's like therapy, apparently. So
I don't know that I really like that response, to be perfectly honest. But he's like, don't worry, they'll be motivated. They'll be motivated. Are they? Will they? Like, did you take that? Did you take that thought process into Northern Illinois game and the Miami game? Don't worry, they'll be motivated. I feel like he's downplaying it, and I feel like he's not taking it seriously. I'll just say it.
Wow. That's a hot take, Vince.
I know. I'm all full of hot takes today.
Here's the thing with me, though. Like, if he's going to come out of the tunnel like he did against Texas A&M and, you know, yelling and barking and pointing and all that different stuff, that needs to be a part of every exit out of the tunnel, whether it's Northern Illinois, Louisville, Texas A&M. Like, because again, you're sending mixed signals. If your emotion as the coach is going to be that wildly different from one opponent to the next, you're basically saying Louisville means more than Miami or Northern Illinois. If that's, you know, in Texas A&M, like if that's you know, kind of what you're presenting to your team in those situations, you know, because again, like how much that actually means to them, I don't know. They all seem to like it, though. Down there at Texas A&M, everyone sure seemed pretty fired up seeing all that emotion and everything at Texas A&M. But I just feel like, you know, again, going back to what we were talking about at the start, he's got to find some kind of happy medium, and that just needs to be his spot all the time. They don't need peaks and valleys that they're seeing from him. That whatever he's giving them, whatever their preparation is, it's got to be the same week in and week out.
Yep, completely agree. And, you know, it's your job to motivate the team, dude. So figure it out.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Don't just take it for granted. That's what I'm saying. Don't take their internal motivation that I believe they should also have because of what happened last year.
Sure.
But don't take that for granted. Stoke that fire, baby. Like, get in there and stoke that fire. Like, don't take it for granted. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying he's purposely not doing it or whatever. I'm just saying don't take for granted the fact that just because you're pissed off and motivated, that the guys that are going to be playing on that field are pissed off and motivated. Like, yeah.
Well, and, you know, kind of the subplot to this is, you know, look, Marcus Freeman, I think you can say, was definitely outcoached twice last year. Louisville and Clemson, the two worst losses of the season. Dabo Swinney, you can understand it because Dabo's won a couple of national championships. Like, whatever you think about Dabo now, he still has 2 national championships. That's pretty significant. He and his staff have been around the block a little bit. Jeff Brohm, regarded as a good coach, you know, he's come up kind of a little bit more off the beaten path. Western Kentucky and then Purdue, obviously another, you know, a stop through that Marcus Freeman made at a different time, but now Louisville, which is Brohm's alma mater. But, you know, after last year's game, there were comments made by Brohm and his staff about, you know, we knew what was coming from Notre Dame, you know, when they lined up at the line of scrimmage. So, like, if I'm Marcus Freeman, especially with the veteran staff that with the 2 coordinators who he has, who we've talked about as being one of the best coordinator duos in the nation, between him and them, like, I would take that personally in terms of the preparation that I've been doing this week to get ready for this game.
That is embarrassing. I'll just say it. Like, the fact that, you know, the comments that were made last year, it's embarrassing, man. Like, I don't think that will be the case this time around. I do think that Mike Denbrock is obviously at a different place in his career.
Much more
Jared
seasoned.
Parker was. He's
Yeah.
much more seasoned. I mean, nobody is going to take the side of Jared Parker as a better coordinator than, you know, Mike Denbrock in 2024, right? I mean, I suppose there could be an argument made that Mike Denbrock and Jared Parker were even when they were both first-year, you know, offensive coordinators, but that's not the conversation that we're having. That's not a realistic conversation. The conversation is Mike Denbrock in the here and now is better than Jared Parker last year. And I'm hoping, I'm praying that the offense is not as predictable and readable as it was last year. Mike Denbrock's going to come with a little bit of fire and a little bit of creativity into the game.
Well, see, and that's what I'm wondering, you know, like I just have to feel like, not that you're just going to all this, you know, because like we were talking about, you don't want it to be a completely different looking playbook, you know, like when we were talking about, do they do a lot of the same things that they did at Texas A&M? But I would have to think that there are going to be some things that they have done and done well in spots that maybe they try to emphasize or highlight, you know, in a game like this to use more of, basically. Like we've seen pre-snap motion. It's a home game. That, you know, this should be like a situation where, you know, more of that comes into play to, you know, to kind of try to keep, you know, Louisville's defense guessing a little bit. Pre-snap motion was virtually non-existent in Jared Parker's offense last year. I mean, the 21 personnel, you know, like between those two, like, do you think we see more of either one of those, or, you know, like something else? Any place you're leaning as you look at this matchup?
Like I praying that they use both of those, frankly. I think using some motions to get Louisville off track a little bit so that they're not just settled into where they want to be and ready to go.
More eye candy. Yeah,
exactly. Some shifts I would be in favor of for the same reason. And then 21 personnel just makes too much sense with the talent that you have in Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love, Riley Leonard, and then whatever two receivers you want to put out there. I just think it makes too much sense not to use that personnel. And on top of that, you've got your second tight end is injured right now. Now, I've got a lot of faith in Eli Raridan and Mitchell Evans, obviously, as a 1-2 punch, but I don't think you want to go to that well a ton. So 21 personnel makes a lot of sense. You get one of those guys in there, and then you can do all kinds of different things.
I mean, you need to be able to run the ball against Louisville. Louisville has been a pretty stingy run defense so far, and we talked about the tackles for loss already. And, you know, look at they wrecked Notre Dame. They only, you know, gave up 40+ rushing yards to Notre Dame last year. But both of these backs are obviously, no offense to Andrick Estime, but they're more dynamic. They're a different kind of back
too.
Yeah. And I mean, Riley, like all three of them have shown that they can make explosive plays on any snap of the football, and to have all three of them in the backfield at the same time, I just think that opens up a completely different world for you offensively. If you do, and it's not just in the run, you know, even though it does open up and give you better possibilities from a running standpoint, but because all three of those guys in there, those are hats that have to be accounted for, and it also potentially opens up much more in the passing game for you as well.
Absolutely.
Because you've still got a couple, got a couple receivers out there, and you got a guy like Mitchell Evans who can be a big factor.
Well, and you know, one of the ways to get a less than confident passer going is easy throws, right? Open throws and layups and all of those different things. And obviously you want him to be able to hit those. And a lot of that comes from, I mean, geez, take a page out of NIU's playbook, and they did some things to scheme guys open. And so that the quarterback wasn't having to make a stand in the pocket, thread it through the needle type throws. He was making throws to guys that were open because of scheme. Mike Denbrock can do that too. We just need to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is too basic, but to me, Riley Leonard is the offensive X factor in this whole thing. You know, between, you know, like you're not just going to win and run the ball, run the ball and win just trying to pound Jeremiah Love and or Jadarian Price. Like Riley Leonard is going to have to make some big plays like we've seen him make the last few weeks as both a runner and a passer of the football. From an offensive standpoint, Louisville held to a season low 326 total yards last week, just 57 rushing yards against Georgia Tech, which I thought was significant because they are averaging 194 yards on the ground and 308 through the air with Tyler Shuck as the quarterback. And, you know, we've mentioned this week who they've played, Austin Peay and then Jacksonville State and then Georgia Tech. And far and away, the numbers were worse against the Power 4 team, Georgia Tech, they played last week. They need to make big plays in the passing game. Like that seems to be their MO. Ja'Cory Brooks, the Alabama transfer, is 14th in the nation, his yards per catch at 17.5, and he's got 6 receptions of 20-plus yards this season. So, I mean, a more than formidable threat, more than formidable challenge. I feel like when you look at those passing numbers that Notre Dame's defensive focus could be fairly similar to what we saw against Miami last week, where you make sure you're not giving up. You know, you're limiting the big passing plays as much as possible, and that could mean, you know, you might give up some runs here or there. I think that, you know, the big thing is making sure that they're not explosive runs. Like you can give up some yards here or there, but you don't want them to be explosive.
Yeah, I'm actually totally fine with them focusing on the pass because, look, Notre Dame's strength is the pass game defensively, right? And that's exactly if a team is coming in and what they're good at is throwing the ball and trying to get big plays. If I'm Notre Dame, I'm like, bring it on, man. Like, that is what we are best at. They're going to be licking their chops, you know, to be plucking balls out of the air and doing some different things. And so I am totally fine with that being their strength. I would be more worried about their run game being their strength for obvious reasons, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think bring it on. I'm totally down with that.
Yeah, and Tyler Shuck, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions this season. He's completing around 70+% of his passes. He has 17 career interceptions from his basically 5 previous playing years at Oregon and Texas Tech. This is his 7th year in school. He redshirted as a true freshman at Oregon, but he's thrown some interceptions in his career. He's also run more previously in his stops at Texas Tech and Oregon than he has run so far this year. He hasn't shown himself as much of a runner so far this season. But, you know, so I wonder, like, if you see potentially more of that from Shuck against Notre Dame Saturday.
I mean, Notre Dame's had issues with you know, running quarterbacks and things like that, and you always want to have as versatile of a offensive game plan as you can possibly have. I'm not that impressed with him as a runner, so I don't know that, you know, that's necessarily something that they want to lean on. You know, so I'm not going to have like a spy or, you know, anything like that. As long as the defensive line and the linebackers do a good job of just keeping him in the pocket and making him be a thrower, and that's it, I think that plays into the hand of what Notre Dame wants to do defensively. I mean, you might see Louisville try kind of like a la Sam Hartman, like the couple of times he would keep a read option or something like that, just to try to keep a defense honest. But this defense is so fast that I think that's going to be very complicated for them to accomplish.
Yeah, you know, again, they haven't used him as a runner at Louisville this year. His last 2 years at Texas Tech, he had over 100 carries and over 500 rushing yards and 6 touchdown runs, you know. So, like, again, he hasn't done it so far at Louisville, but it's not like he's never run before.
Well,
you know? So, like, that's I guess I think that Al Golden's got to have that in the back of his mind, that it is a possibility. And
I think Jeff Brohm is a very, very good offensive game planning type of coach, and he's going to pull whatever he needs to out of wherever he pulls it from to try to be successful against Notre Dame's defense, right? I mean, they scored 33 points on the defense last year, so it's not like they can't score. So Notre Dame's going to have to do a better job of, you know, keeping them out of the end zone. I mean, bottom line, they're going to have to do a better job. They can't get whooped up in the trenches, and they're going to have to defend the pass better.
All right, we've got some game props for Notre Dame Louisville and our predictions coming up in a little bit. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, baby. Yeah, I'm ready for rapid fire. Heck yeah. Let's do it.
Let's go. Let's go.
Game
By
day
yourself.
rapid fire.
Riley Leonard has turned the corner with his passing game.
Sell. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen bits and pieces. I need to see him put it all together. So it is an absolute sell for me right now. Now, it may be a buy after this game once we see him do the short and the long, put it together. But right now, no, it's a sell for me.
It's a sell for me as well. We saw him start to turn the corner.
Yes,
last
agreed.
week.
Agreed.
There's still much more to go, because it's not just, hey, let's hit a deep pass to Bo Collins, and hey, let's throw one up and let's get a pass interference call here. You know, as long as you're getting pass interference calls, obviously that's
a positive.
That's a net positive. Yeah.
Yes.
But you want to start completing more of those, and the layups that you mentioned earlier, that to me is the final piece to the package as well, especially for a guy who is as mobile as he is, you know, like those little sprint out last week. And probably not the easiest throw in the world to make, but at the same time, you know, just, we've said before, they've got to find him more layups than like just what they tried last week. Like more screen pass, you know, more just something short over the middle, you know, those kind of things. They don't all have to be bubble screens and stuff like that. But he has started to, so it's a sell for me as well. Like this could be a big coming out type party for Riley Leonard if he's able to put some things together this weekend.
I'm hoping. I'm hoping. I will just say that.
I mean, Mike Denbrock said at the start of the season that look at week 6 and 7. You know, I don't know if he was necessarily meaning specifically week 6 and 7, but you know, look, 4 games in the books. We're coming to week 5 right now. So we're getting close. What, you know, his point was the middle of the season. We're getting closer to the middle of the season. And we've seen Riley Leonard's game build now a little bit. So can we see it build even more against probably the second best defense they've played this year? Mm-hmm. Some might even say the best defense, depending on, you know, how you look at it.
I mean, well, you know, all of a sudden, you know, Texas A&M is you know, a doorstop now that everybody, you know, now that Notre Dame
beat them, right?
Yeah. So their defense is garbage because Notre Dame beat them. So that's the argument for Louisville being a better defense. They're not a better defense. They're the second best defense on the schedule, I want to say.
I think
so. That's still a challenge. That's still a massive challenge. But I'm sorry, they're not the best defense.
So we've talked about Devin Ford and Aeneas Williams seeing the bulk of the third down snaps for the Irish this season because they have the roles of third down backs and are, in theory anyway, the better blockers. So the other side of it is, my question for you, when you're a team like Notre Dame and you've got a playmaker like Jeremiah Love, is it a good idea to be taking him off the field on such an important down like third down so often?
Not as much as they do. I mean, I understand that there's all these different roles and you want to kind of spread out those roles. And you know, if you're Dylan McCullough and you want to do all these different things and get as many guys involved, blah, 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 blah. Get it. Got it. But Jeremiah Love is your most dynamic player in the backfield. And to not have him on the field, like, look, I get if you want to max protect or something like that and you want to keep guys in to protect, maybe that's not a time when you want to have him in there. Cool, I get it. But I also wouldn't mind having him as an outlet if stuff breaks down.
Right.
You know, I mean, put the ball in his hands. He may be able to pick up that third down on accident, basically, if the play that you designed doesn't work out the way you wanted it to work out. So I think in moderation, having those other guys out there on third down makes sense. But I also think you need to have Jeremiah Love out there as well.
I mean, he has to be accounted for on every snap.
Exactly.
That's the kind of player he is. And, you know, again, when you've got him and Riley Leonard out there together, that's 2 guys who have to be accounted for on every snap. I'm sorry, but Devin Ford and Aeneas Williams don't fit into that category. You know, the reason they're out there is for blocking. And if you go back and look at the Pro Football Focus stuff, Devin Ford's blocking grades haven't even been that great this year, you know? So like, maybe that's why we're starting to see more of Williams out there, but still, Jeremiah Love, as Marcus Freeman said, it's not rocket science. Like, he's the guy you've got to find. The ball has to be in his hands more often. We had that conversation earlier this week. I don't think that when you've lacked consistency making big dynamic plays, with the exception of the three guys, Leonard, Price, and Love, two of those three have to be on the field on every play. On next to every, almost every play. I'd say 95% of the time.
Yeah. I mean, so you either need to get those guys back up to par on blocking, or you need to figure out how differently to use them to gain an advantage on third down.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because again, third down is the most important down.
Oh yeah.
It's the most important down of a series. Third down, is the defense going to get off the field? Is the offense going to stay on the field? And
right.
If Jeremiah Love, and again, you can throw Price into the mix as well, but mostly Jeremiah Love. If Love is on the field on third down, you're giving your team a better chance to convert that third down.
Right. Agreed.
Case closed.
As long as you're not just handing it to him up the middle.
Right. Creatively finding different ways to get
there you go.
But whether it's draw plays or
whatever,
whatever it happens to be. So Notre Dame Louisville, of course, is going to be televised on the Peacock streaming app. My question to you, if you could only do one of these two things: one, put the game on NBC instead of Peacock, or two, swap it out with Florida State as the primetime home game, which would you choose?
At this point, obviously, revisionist history is always the best, right? Or hindsight is 20/20, whatever cliche you want to use. You got to swap it out for the primetime game, because right now Florida State is a dumpster fire. And the only good thing about Florida State being a dumpster fire is that the post-game show might not be quite as long since it's a night game. But if you want the best opponent at night, you got to put Louisville there.
Well, and that is part of the question. Do you want the best opponent at night? I would say, because I've kind of gone back and forth on this as well, I would put it on NBC just because everyone is a lot happier when the game is actually on NBC as opposed to the streaming app. I don't know how many people we've heard from this week. I'm not paying for that Peacock. It's like, get the subscription. It's $7, and then you cancel it right away. It's not
right,
but that's a different story. Do you really want to, we were talking about these teams have only played 4 previous times. And then you've got what happened down there last year and kind of the chippiness and the bitterness. Like, do you want to give Louisville the satisfaction of, sort of like having the cachet of being the Notre Dame's primetime home game? Like,
it's a good question. I never really looked at it that way, to be perfectly honest with you. Never looked at it that way. So,
because I understand exactly what you're saying, and a lot of people would say the same thing. Louisville is obviously the better team right now than Florida State, so it just makes sense. Well, that should be the primetime game. But to me, it's like, don't give Louisville the satisfaction,
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'm going to switch my answer. What do you think about that?
What's more likely, Notre Dame is a 1-loss team or they lose at least 3 games?
I think what's more likely is that they are a 1-loss team. That's more likely. I don't see them losing 3 more games. That means they're a 4-loss team. I don't see that being the case.
3 loss total. Not.
Oh, okay.
Not
I still don't see that being
not 3 more. Sorry. So either 1 loss or they lose 2 more.
If they go out and let's just lay a complete egg on Saturday against Louisville, maybe I change my answer on this.
Yeah.
But I just have a hard time seeing them losing 3 games. I just do.
This is a much tougher question than it should be.
I know.
When you sit and think about it, because of all the things that we've talked about in this show with consistency and peaks and valleys and all those different things. My gut instinct says it's much more likely that Notre Dame ends up with just 1 loss as opposed to losing 2 more games, which would make them a 3-loss team at the end of the season. But
It wouldn't surprise me.
Like even if they win this game and they win this game against Louisville convincingly, then what's the question going to be? Well, Stanford knocked him off 2 years ago. Like who's to say? You know what I mean? Like, and that's what's distressing about this question. I'm going to go with they're more likely to be a one-loss team, but it just stays in the back of my mind. Like
if
what is this team going to be the rest of the year?
Sean, if they win this game, are you feeling a lot better about it?
At least in the moment.
Okay, that's fair.
But then we'll get here, again, a week from Monday when we start Stanford week and we have the conversation all over again. But I'm feeling a lot better. But look, we thought that it meant something to beat Texas A&M, but then they turned around and Northern Illinois happened.
Yeah, it did.
So
it certainly did.
Fill in the blank. A 2-loss September for Notre Dame would be blank.
It would be devastating to what you wanted to accomplish this year as the Notre Dame team. I mean, if their 2 losses are in September, I mean, you still got an outside chance of getting into the playoff. And by outside chance, I mean, you're going to need some help by some other teams.
I thought we weren't allowed to talk about playoff anymore.
We're not. But you're talking about losses, so I don't have a choice.
Okay.
But a 2-loss September, man, that is extremely disappointing for what we thought this team was supposed to be this year. Extremely disappointing.
It'd be disastrous is what it would be. And it would and totally unthinkable as well. Coming into this season with everything we thought about this team and the head coach, the quarterback, the coordinators, go on down the line, everything that we thought. 2 losses in September, 2 losses, period, I think would be a disastrous season for Notre Dame with the schedule that they had. And, again, with all the things that were aligned and that we thought they were. But if you lose 2 games in September's not even over, man, you talk about hot seat. For Marcus, and I'm not trying to be negative, but it's but
you're not wrong though either.
This is where we are right now.
You're not wrong either.
So Louisville held Notre Dame to 44 rushing yards on 28 carries last year. Over under 1.5 Fighting Irish players who will have at least 44 rushing yards this week.
Over, and I feel fairly confident about that. I might have said over if you would have said 2.5.
I felt like 2.5 would be pushing it a little bit too far.
I know, but I just feel like I do think that the run game is going to be an emphasis in this game. And I think both running backs and Riley Leonard are going to be over 44. So I do think that that'll be the case.
Haynes King, the Georgia Tech quarterback, had 58 yards last week against Louisville. He was their only rusher who had over that total, 44 yards. Okay. Nobody else was able to top it. Just by, way of explanation, they had 98 total yards. I think it's going to be 2 as well. I think it's going to be at least, like you said, like obviously Price and Love and Leonard all have the ability to hit that number on just 1 carry. They're all home run threats. And I think that at least 2 of those 3 are going to do it, if not all 3. And I mean, if all 3 do it, you're looking at a really good day, obviously. For Notre Dame.
Agreed. I completely agree with that sentiment as well. But since you said 1.5, I'll just take the over.
It is over. It is over. We're both over.
Yep.
So since this is the Irish wear green game, that means fans are encouraged to wear green in the stands for the game Saturday afternoon. What percentage of the crowd do you think is going to have red on inside Notre Dame Stadium?
Maybe 20, maybe. And the reason I say that is because Louisville had to return some of their ticket allotment already.
Right.
So if they're not even selling out what Notre Dame gave them, I just don't see them really turning up in this game. I don't know, man. I don't think it's going to be that high.
See, and that's why,
Coach, how do you mentally prepare for a fan base and a team that's as hungry and ready to win at all costs as Louisville?
That's like, I don't get, like they return tickets, but they're a hungry fan base ready to win at all costs, and they're going to invade Notre Dame Stadium. It's like, if you're a team with red, coming to Notre Dame is like your dream. Like, like that. And Louisville's not that far away. It's what, 3 hours and 45-minute drive from,
it's not bad.
Right across the river in Kentucky, literally right across the river from Indiana in northern Kentucky. It basically sits the same kind of place like Notre Dame is related to Michigan up here at the top half of the state. So like, I'm going to say 15% tops.
Okay.
I just because that's looking at the fact that they return tickets, like that said something to me right away. And I'm not counting the band either. Like the band doesn't count because the band gets in and all that.
Right.
Kind of
they
stuff.
don't need tickets.
Yeah. I'm talking about fans who need tickets throughout the stadium. What do you think it ended up with Ohio State last year? Because Notre Dame did they kind of went to all their countermeasures to keep Ohio State fans from invading. Like, do you think maybe 25%?
Yeah. It was a lot less than I had anticipated when I showed up that day.
Yeah.
And they were sprinkled throughout the stadium, I guess, but it was not as high as I thought. So yeah, I think 25 is probably a safe bet on that one.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be a lot lower.
Yeah.
For Louisville.
Yeah, me too.
I guess we'll see. Maybe we could end up being surprised, but I think it's always a pretty telling early sign when the opposing fan base is returning tickets. Again, especially when you're that close. Like, look at the rest of the ACC. There aren't any ACC teams, I don't think, that are any closer to Louisville than, obviously I'm not saying Notre Dame is an ACC team. I'm just saying, like, does Louisville travel that well? And they are a basketball state. Like, are people really that fired up about their football? I'm sure in the city of Louisville itself, they're fired up down there. But, again, like going back to, would you want this a primetime game and all that, that's kind of the other side of it, like how much actual national attention does a game like this get?
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that's accurate, man. They're not going to travel that well. They're not as fired up of a fan base as whoever that guy is thinks they are.
They're willing to win at all costs.
All costs, except the cost of a drive from Louisville to
driving a ticket. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, some game props. Riley Leonard's passing yards over under 160.5 yards. Will he get to 161?
I mean, I think he will. I'm just not confident. Like, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole in real life. Like, I feel like I want him to, but I don't know that he has to. I'm going to say under. I'm going to say under.
I will not wager on this.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to go over.
Oh, I love you, Sean Stiers.
This would be a season high for him. I think he's going to go over 160 yards.
Oh, I love it.
Against Louisville. I think he's going to make some plays in the passing game.
And Louisville wants to make plays in the passing game, big plays or whatever downfield, not going to happen, I don't think. I think Notre Dame makes a couple of plays downfield, and that could elevate his numbers a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And again, find something, get Jeremiah Love running.
Sure.
And let him catch the ball with a little bit of momentum and just go. I mean, for the most part, there's no reason that Louisville should fear playing Notre Dame man-to-man. And so if you can get Jeremiah Love matched up on a linebacker, I would be licking my chops at that if you could find that matchup. Leonard's touchdown pass number is 1/2. So, the question is obviously, will he have a touchdown pass against Louisville?
Take the over, baby.
I think so as well.
Take the over
as well. Also, Riley Leonard's rushing yards, 57.5.
Man, that's high. I really like the 44 number a lot better. I was very confident in the 44 number. I'm not as confident in the 57.5 number. But since I took the under on passing, I'll take the over on rushing.
Okay. I'm going to go over on both, actually. I think he's going to be in that 60 to 70 yard rushing range. So I'll be over on his rushing number of 57.5 yards as well. Tyler Shuck for Louisville, 225.5 passing yards. Does he get to 226?
I mean, I think he could. I don't believe any quarterback so far against Notre Dame has even gotten to 200 yards. I think one of them, I think the Northern Illinois kid had 198, I want to say off the top of my head.
Sounds about right.
And so nobody has breached 200 yards yet. Now, is Louisville going to just throw the ball all day long? Is that their goal? Like, just mass it up? It's possible, but I'm going to take the under. I've got a lot of faith in Notre Dame's pass defense.
Yeah, it's interesting. Notre Dame has the number 6 pass efficiency defense in the nation. Shuck has the number 6 individual pass efficiency rating. So they are both number 6. It's strength on strength in this game. But I'm going to go over. I think that because I think that Notre Dame is really going to put the clamps on Louisville's running game. And so I think they're going to be throwing the ball quite a bit. So I'm going to go over for sure.
All right. I could see them racking up some yardage and not scoring though, too.
Because then his other number, Shuck's touchdown pass number is 1.5.
Under. Notre Dame's giving up 9 points a game.
I think I know, but they also, this is probably the best, at least statistical offense that they've seen so far. But I'm going to go under as well. I think he has 1, but I don't think he's going to get 2. Interesting receiving. I'm surprised they even made this a line. Jeremiah Love's receiving yards over under 8.5 yards.
That's 1 catch to over.
But the question is, I guess, does he get to 1 catch? Because
well, fair. But yeah, yes, over. Because
I'm trying to see what Love has right now. I know he doesn't have a ton of receptions. Let's see. 6 for 40.5. So basically that's not even, I mean, that's above his average even. 8.5. Again, I feel like Jeremiah Love has got to be used as a weapon in that part of the offense. Whether or not that actually happens, I don't know. But come on, he's got to go over 8.5 yards, right? How about his rushing number? 68.5 yards.
Ooh. I'm going to take the over because I think it has to be over for them to win, and I think they're going to win. So I'll take the over.
I'm going to go over as well. And I agree with your rationale. I mean, we're leading to the prediction.
Yeah.
Probably not going to be a huge shock who we're going to predict, but
it's not.
But yeah, I mean, like we were saying earlier, we both feel like Notre Dame's going to have at least 2 rushers over that 44-yard mark that the whole team had last year. And I just feel like this is just such a much more dynamic kind of back that Louisville's going to have to try to attack if they're going to, and again, coupled with the quarterback and everything else. How about Bo Collins, 38.5 receiving yards?
Well, you're feeling like Riley Leonard's going to have a big game throwing the ball, so I think that's one of his favorite targets. So I'll take the over. Yeah,
I mean, I think he's going to have at least 5 receptions in this game, even though that's not a prop. If he has 5, I mean, he's going to be over fairly easily, I think. Unless somebody else, unless Jaden Greathouse or Mitchell Evans or somebody finally emerges and kind of steals some of those yards away, I've got to go with Bo Collins. He's been the go-to guy so far. And then finally, Ja'Cory Brooks, the Alabama transfer for Louisville, his receiving yard number is 71.5 yards.
Under. I don't think there's no – look at what this defense has done to stud receivers.
Yeah.
They don't get numbers, and he's not going to either.
That's right. I think they're going to be locked in. They're going to be ready to go against Ja'Cory Brooks. He's going to be significant part of the game plan, and I think it's going to be under as well. Now, somebody else might be the beneficiary of that. I don't see somebody having a monster game by any means, but I don't think Ja'Cory Brooks
It's a lot of yards for a receiver, for one guy. I don't see it.
And like you said, especially like look at the 2 games against Ohio State with NFL, NFL draft picks out there. They didn't do it. So why should you think Ja'Cory Brooks is going to do it? Okay, so the game itself, Notre Dame's a 6.5-point favorite. The point total for the game, 46.5 is the over-under. What are we doing here? What's your prediction, Vince?
Well, I'm taking the -6.5 because I've kind of alluded to it all week long, and I will continue to allude to the fact that I think Notre Dame will be up for this game. I don't find it difficult to get up for a game like this. You got the alternate uniform, you got the revenge factor, you've got Marcus Freeman probably feels like a lot of people are breathing down his neck. I mean, you've got all these different factors. I don't see how this team is not fired up for this game. And I'm not saying Louisville's not going to be fired up for this game, but Notre Dame is better and should come into this game with a giwandous boulder on their shoulder, like a giant chip.
A giwandous boulder.
Giwandous. Okay. They've got, as they used to say in I Love Lucy, they got some splaining to do. Okay. They got some splaining to do. And so I think Notre Dame's going to come out and dominate in this game. I've got Notre Dame 31-13.
Vince, I got to get my honor back. That's what Notre Dame is playing for their honor this weekend. And I think they're going to do it as well. I think that we're going to see, if the first couple of home games have been lethargic, I think we're going to see a whole different kind of frenzy out there Saturday afternoon when Notre Dame hosts Louisville. I think that as you said, that game last year has put a massive chip on everyone's shoulders from the head coach on down.
Better have.
And I think we're going to see a different kind of focus. I think they're going to take a lot better care of the football this week than they did last week. And who knows, maybe even James Rendell will be a weapon in the punting game. Maybe somebody. That's one thing we didn't touch on. Special teams has got to get its stuff together this week.
No doubt about that. And we talked about earlier on in the season about how, these punts by Rendell are going to have to be better because there's going to be a game where field position is going to be super important. I think we're there. I think this is a game where field position could be super important. You want Louisville to have to go the length of the field every time they touch a football, right? And that's where the punter comes into play. So let's roll.
Yep. So I'm taking Notre Dame, given that 6.5 points. I'm under on the point total, though. I've got them winning 27-17 is my score. 27-17. Again, I think that they are going to look good, but I'm not. I mean, you've only got them scoring 4 more points.
No, I'm under too, based on my score, right? Because I had 31-13.
Okay.
And
so we're both on 44.
It's 44. So there you go. Taking the under.
Yep.
That's a high number. That's a high number.
I think so too, especially considering how Notre Dame games have gone. I don't know if I don't have my phone in here, so I can't look it up. I mean, for Notre Dame to be favored by 6.5 and for the point total to be 46.5, I think that is a little bit high number. So
they're expecting a Purdue outcome, I guess.
I don't know. Apparently so. Maybe it's more significant than we think that 4 games for Notre Dame, 3 for Louisville, that's what Vegas thinks of Louisville. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not 100% sold on Louisville, but they're still going to be a formidable opponent.
Sure.
So
that's going to do it for today. Vince, enjoyed it as always. We'll be out there at the game this weekend, Notre Dame and Louisville, and we will be back next week. Of course, it is a bye week for Notre Dame, but we will have shows all next week on our regular schedule. Both Brian and Vince and I think Trevor might stop in at least once next week, as well as Jesse continues to transition to his new gig. That's obviously, I didn't even think about that. That's why he's not here today. So enjoy the game. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you Monday on IB Nation Sports Talk.